Turn back your clocks to 1972, the WWF. Pedro Morales standing tall as their world champion, their leading man, the number one that Vince J. McMahon relied on to sell out venues all over the East Coast. Morales held great appeal to New Yorkers on account of his Puerto Rican heritage, obviously, born in Culebra and later moved to New York to finish high school. When it comes to home crowd support, wrestling has quite simply never changed. And while CM Punk gets mega pops in Chicago, or UK audiences are always overjoyed to see Drew McIntyre, back then, the WWF's sizable Puerto Rican fanbase could not get enough of Pedro Morales. His fiery babyface charisma and energy made him a hit beyond that demographic as well, ensuring that while he might not quite have been Bruno Sammartino, he was still a major box office success for the territory. The heat in the building for his world title bouts is the stuff of legend. Not only did he garner very loud, very passionate support from the crowds in attendance for his world title wars, but the heels he locked horns with, guys like Freddie Blassie, Stan Stasiak, and Blackjack Mulligan, essentially had to fear for their lives come showtime. Deep down, most audiences knew professional wrestling was a work. I mean, come on, it so clearly is. That it was a spectacle, that while it was athletic and hard-hitting, sure, it was obviously not true competition. That being said, the wrestlers would tell you that over their dead bodies, with so many committed to their personas and kayfabe that they remained at least somewhat in character almost any time they went out in public. This was a time where the team player, Mr. Happy to Be Here, was a non-entity, with everyone at or near the top of the card shamelessly selfish and ruthless 99% of the time, putting self-preservation and the importance of public image ahead of the feelings of others, and bell to bell, while obviously not realistic, like say an MMA bout, many of the talents put their blood, sweat and tears into maintaining a certain degree of gritty realism between the ropes, near the top of the card at least. That level of heat, where the fakery of wrestling is as hushed up and covered over as possible, where fans can so totally suspend their disbelief for a short spell, so as to get dangerously immersed in the live product. Well, you see, that heat left the balloon a long time ago. In 1989, Vincent Kennedy McMahon testified before the New Jersey State Senate that wrestling is indeed a fixed, worked art form. Everyone knew that, but there's a difference between knowing that and confirming that. His cartoon era, which exploded the wrestling medium into mainstream international popularity during the 80s, with Hulk Hogan becoming a worldwide celebrity, had already started planting the seeds, introducing viewers to a hammy, over-the-top, often ridiculous take on wrestling that was more blatantly fake than any mainstream action that had come before it. The reasoning behind McMahon confirming that wrestling was, and I quote, an activity in which participants struggle hand in hand primarily for the purpose of providing entertainment to spectators. It was very simple. He wanted to spare the WWF from continuing to pay state sports licensing fees. Gotta keep an eye on that profit margin, gotta pinch those pennies wherever you can. The result of his decision became markedly clearer as the 90s blew in, with sillier characters and angles in the WWF and WCW, with fans in general gradually expressing less and less passion for the action unfolding before them. It was only with the wild, car crash TV fun of stuff like the NWO and the Attitude Era in the late 90s that wrestling regained some of its madman heat in the US. Far from the sports style, the hard-grafting action of the 70s, though, this 90s boom period saw wrestling veer head-on into soap opera action. More than ever before, with controversy, smut, bloody mayhem, and ludicrous gimmicks all getting thrown in to spike ratings and keep people talking. Swerves were a dime a dozen, titles were hot potatoes, and ratings were through the roof as wrestling moved into the Jerry Springer vein of TV. And thanks to just brilliant geniuses like Vince Russo, the worked shoot came fully into view as wrestlers began to wink wink nudge nudge, flip the script and side-eye that fourth wall. trying to dupe the fans by essentially saying, yeah, wrestling's fake, everything you've watched tonight is fake, but this right here isn't. This is real, this is off script. This was a big part of why WCW in 2000 was the biggest joke in the wrestling world. It's one of about 600,000 odd reasons why the promotion was dead and buried by early 2001. Alright, so let's fast forward. 2011. CM Punk, a long-time SMARC favourite who enjoyed some major mainstream interest in 2009 as a pious, obnoxious heel who ran Jeff Hardy out of town, before being thrown under the proverbial bus for suggesting a suit and tie wouldn't suit his persona. You see, the WWE had a dress code where almost everyone was expected to get suited and booted for their red carpet and media appearances. The only way to avoid it was to have a gimmick where it might not have fit. The Undertaker, for example, a devil-worshipping biker from the desert who burned his family home down. Yeah, a sensible suit probably doesn't suit someone who did all of that. John Cena, a gigantic 8-year-old, was another, with his shirts selling like hotcakes, even though the man himself clearly has a love for oddly coloured three-piece suits. CM Punk believed that, considering his cult leader, ascetic gimmick, he too should have been considered exempt. There's a valid argument for that, considering his persona at the time, the fact that he was cosplaying as Charles Manson, but to the bigwigs in the WWE, Punk's notion was merely proof that he had a Texas-sized ego that needed to be knocked down 100 pegs. So in order to do that, the several months of hard work that had gone into making him a main eventer, successful, hard work I might add, were undone, and he started jobbing to R-Truth on pay-per-view pre-shows. By the summer of 2011, CM Punk, both on-screen and off, was fed up. He'd had enough, and seeing dollar signs, the promotion turned the real-life Phil Brooks's frustrations with the company into an angle, wheeling in his real-life contract situation at the time as well. Sporting a Steve Austin top, Punk was given some airtime to publicly trash the company, burying Vince McMahon, his team, the WWE's treatment of Punk himself, and the ass-kissing mayhem of top dogs over the years, such as John Cena, Hulk Hogan, and, of course, The Rock. Everyone was talking about this promo at the time. General interest in the WWE went up, and Punk seemed like the next main event sensation in waiting. Money in the Bank 2011 to watch is one of the absolute best pay-per-views from the dreaded PG era it hailed from. The closing of Punk winning the gold and fleeing through the crowd was a perfect ending as the jaded anti-hero employee, hard done by for too long, gets revenge and sticks it to his out-of-touch old bastard employer. Awesome, very good. The buy rates, however, did not suggest this was the bee's knees after all. While Money in the Bank 2011 did noticeably better than the previous year's ladder slamming event, it was not a big enough margin to suggest that Punk was the next big thing at the box office. The next month, SummerSlam 2011, headlined by a convoluted build to a rematch between Cena and Punk for the gold, was over 50,000 pay-per-view buys lower than the year before's SummerSlam. For all the hype, for all the excitement among more hardcore and smarkier crowds, CM Punk's wild, script-tearing antics had not lit a fire under the millions of casual fan asses out there. In fact, many were left just scratching their heads at half the insider references Punk dropped with his worked-shoot gimmick. His lengthy WWE title run failed to move tickets to the point that a title-free John Cena was often trusted to headline shows over the Punk Man, and in the years that followed, everyone from AJ Lee to Will Ospreay to MJF to CM Punk again have pulled similar stunts to similar results. Short-term buzz, long-term flatline. The fact is, most fans, whether they want to admit it or not, enjoy sitting in and watching the show as a story unfolding, one where the characters within it are sincere and not constantly undercutting their own situations with ill-fitting jokes and shoot references to how fake everything really is. In 2025, kayfabe is as dead as the albatross, lost to the winds of too many industry-crushing decisions over the decades. No one is expecting a return to the good old days of hoodwinking audiences. Between the ropes, wrestling has largely evolved past a style that can be covered up anyway, with high flyers, deathmatch wrestlers, big bumpers, and more, turning the ring into a more extravagant showcase of elite choreography than ever before. Is that a bad thing? Not necessarily. Results have been mixed. From mind-blowing classics to AEW's frequent trips into the hell of Matthews Butchermania. But it has pushed wrestling into even more of a niche entertainment market than before, one where the fandom generally discuss it as outright fake, complaining about who's not getting pushed or who botched last week, instead of actually just watching and enjoying the stories unfolding the way you would a more routine TV drama. Triple Nose himself is slowly but very surely going insane due to this aspect of wrestling fan culture for years. The Lame was able to present himself as the hip, fresh alternative to the often bizarre booking of late-stage, old man Vince McMahon. McMahon would change scripts up on a dime and destroy his golden boy, Roman Reigns, with some of the most poorly written, just outright embarrassing promos in the history of the promotion, from Suffer and Succotash, words Reigns looked like he was in visible pain delivering, to his awful Jack and the Beanstalk tirade on the Big Show, to his dismal potato jokes about Sheamus. Time and again Reigns was decimated by McMahon's ill-fitting creative. As this decade has shown, Reigns on the mic can be very good when he's allowed to play it cool and measured and find his own voice. The tribal chief was a cold-hearted, narcissistic sociopath, a dangerous force of rule-bending, competitive power whose promos frequently oozed supreme confidence and dark charisma. Reigns was allowed to actually breathe on the mic and play it serious, which is what he's best at beyond the occasional funny side-eye facial expression or mean-spirited one-liner. Under Vince McMahon for quite a while there, Reigns was getting forced to try and emulate the goofballery of The Rock. Only he didn't even have Brian Gewirtz to script his material for him, nor did he have The Rock's penchant for comedic delivery. It was stuff like this that made Triple H, with his serious, grounded booking in NXT, seem like a guy who could course-correct the WWE and get it back on track with some sensible, long-term storytelling and characterizations. In 2025, however, the Emperor has no clothes, while late 2022 and much of 2023 showcased Triple H as a smart, if not particularly daring booker, who managed to get Cody Rhodes, Gunther, and even Jey Uso over with fans. 2024 revealed cracks in the foundations. From the dreary booking of Rhodes' long-awaited title reign, where the American Nightmare frequently got the Sting treatment, being beaten down, betrayed, and humiliated month to month for desperate grabs at fan sympathy, to severely cooling off Roman Reigns and bungling what could have been a huge babyface turn and bloodline reunion angle into a rushed mess where Reigns remained unlikable and unsympathetic in the face of the chunky new Uso brothers' ill-fated top heel push. All the way to his just generally clunky nature of his uninspired mid-card angles and aimless talent, Triple H has been getting spread thin, and the holes in his game have become all too apparent to many viewers. This is actually where kayfabe, believe it or not, could save him just a little bit. He could just not publicly acknowledge the criticism, and largely avoid interviews beyond business talks and the like moving forwards. He's a millionaire. He doesn't have to be on camera crying because someone on Twitter didn't enjoy Raw this week. Vince McMahon only sporadically gave interviews during his decades-long run on top, and only a select few, such as his very infamous 2001 Playboy talk, actually saw him open up a little about his life. His appearances on chat shows during the Attitude Era saw him largely in a toned-down version of his Mr. McMahon persona, and he played it cool when it came to fan backlash towards some of his creative decisions. Triple H, however, seemingly so desperate to present himself as the genius head honcho showrunner, is time and again blabbering about the inner workings of booking the WWE. PLEs have post-shows where he tries to be a PG Dana White, representing the company and answering media questions, during which he'll drone on and on about the performances and his own writing and green lighting of what fans have seen transpire. It's all fake, guys. It's like a TV drama or a Broadway play. Did I mention it's fake yet? And it only gets worse from there. One of the Lame's superiors on the TKO board, his old rival on screen and off, Dwayne Johnson, enjoys reminding everyone what a fake theatrical work of fakery they're watching that is clearly fake. Last year, Johnson briefly had good reason on a personal level to at least address kayfabe. Heading into WrestleMania 40, Johnson had turned heel and joined forces with Roman Reigns due to the Cody crybabies living up to their mantle. Johnson's psychotic ego trip, which was allegedly supposed to see him just take Rhodes' Mania spot and beat Reigns before vacating the belt, got a negative reception, who would have thought? Not in the building, mind you, where Rhodes announced Rock was taking his place. The live crowd that night loved it, but soon after the rest of the world was throwing a fit. And can you just imagine that for a second? The full-time babyface guy who just won the Royal Rumble bows out, the Hollywood guy and Attitude Era legend, he steps on in past 50 and whoops the heel top dog who's been champ for 3.5 years. And then, if rumours are indeed to be believed, The Rock was going to vacate the title. You can just imagine his promo, some buzzword-ridden mess where he claims he's giving the belt up to the next generation, that it's time for them to grab the brass ring, but he's too busy making movies where he probably plays a bodybuilding action man with a daughter who will mention his fondness for lifting iron, something about some Polynesian heritage, and a few lame jokes to make him endearing. Yeah, all of that. Too busy with all of that to actually put anyone over, so the belt's up for grabs. Good luck, gang. Just know that The Rock will be lineal champion forever. Sort of like CM Punk in AEW. Yeah, so that didn't happen, and at a wild WrestleMania 40 press conference before the show, in kayfabe largely, Cody Rhodes party-pooped The Rock's presentation on the historical and cultural value of a Rock versus Roman match. The Rock soon turned heel, smacking Cody silly, and throughout the presser there were scattered jeers and angry boos for The Rock. This was heat at a kayfabe level, heat from fans over the bizarre detour WrestleMania 40 was taking, far away from the Roman Reigns versus Cody Rhodes rematch many were expecting. According to at least one journalist, though, whatever that word even means anymore, the WWE faithful were genuinely miffed with Dwayne Johnson the man beyond the Rock character. Never mind they'd all been happy to see him a mere few weeks ago. Fans were now fuming that no-good scoundrel who turned Mick Foley's brains into Swiss cheese at Rumble 99 had allegedly not put any money into helping those affected by the Maui fires. Look, it's worth remembering a lot of charities, businesses, relief efforts, etc. like to acquire famous people to speak for them, for PR purposes, to try and drive up general interest in whatever the situation is. And when the 1% wanted that Maui land, the people already living there had to go. I mean, when that totally natural fire blew in and conveniently displaced all those normal people, well, charitable relief genuinely was desperately needed. And obviously, as far as celebrities go, Dwayne Johnson, very recognizable, fairly popular, or at least was fairly popular for a long time. You can get why he'd be an ideal fit. Why exactly they had Oprah there, who hasn't been relevant in years, is a bit more debatable by this logic, but the point is, The Rock did indeed donate to the Maui relief effort, quite a lot by all accounts, and then talked up the relief effort itself to try and encourage the masses to cough up some of their change as well. This journalist suggested The Rock had done no such thing, and then suggested WWE fans were turning on him because of it, as if he wasn't healing it up on the night. Now, Johnson was understandably frustrated with this poorly informed nonsense, and responded, explaining straight up that he was healing it up, and fans were booing him in good fun as a part of the show, which was true. Fair enough, this was an attack on his character as a man. It doesn't take a genius to figure out it was false by merely, watching it. And he has the right to clap back and set the record straight. Unfortunately, this interaction seemingly opened the floodgates for Dwayne Johnson, completely forgetting the locker room cultural expectations of kayfabe and working the mercs. Johnson now seemed to think that WWE was just another movie role, and this mentality, including frequently dismissing the final boss as just a silly TV character he plays, became the norm. We all know wrestling is fake, obviously, but wrestling is not like highbrow TV drama or cinema. It's just not. It's lowbrow, it's trashy, it's guilty pleasure TV a lot of the time, and what it needs to learn, and what it used to know, is that the rules its performers should abide by are very similar to the rules, not of TV drama, not of cinema, but of reality television. Now, just to be clear, reality TV sucks. It's pure, unfiltered brain rot, much worse than mediums like professional wrestling. In fact, we're talking those manufactured drama reality shows, the Kardashians, the Real Housewives, Love Island, the Osbournes, if you want to go back in time. All of these are blatantly scripted. situations are prearranged. You'd probably find they reshoot key scenes from time to time where needed, and while anyone who watches this nonsense, unless they are a true retard, knows deep down that it's phony, the stars of the show let them suspend their disbelief just a little bit a lot of the time, maintaining a certain level of commitment to character, acting as if the so-called reality in reality TV isn't a crock. Sometimes it's nice to pretend. It's engaging to set your performance, your industry apart, by maintaining a veil of character and illusion around it. During my recent WrestleMania video essay, one commenter suggested that it would be cringe for everyone to try and maintain kayfabe. To that I would say it depends on the performer, but even the cringe ones would be endearingly cringe, especially in this day and age of disingenuous vibes across the board. Curiosity around professional wrestling for non-fans would likely grow at the sight of ridiculous characters maintaining kayfabe rather than being out of character and discussing it like it's any old silly show on TV. Before we get to more recent examples, the most worthwhile one to consider historically is none other than Jerry Lawler and Andy Kaufman on David Letterman. On the July 28, 1982 episode of Late Night with David Letterman, Lawler and Kaufman came on as guests to address their ridiculous wrestling feud. Kaufman, who'd anointed himself the intergender champion of wrestling, fell foul of Memphis's second favourite son, Jerry Lawler, who'd compressed his pencil neck into mush with 2 pile drivers for his embarrassing antics between the reps. This was a simpler time, you see, where the standard pile driver could be presented as a career, maybe even life-threatening devastator that ought to be banned from the ring. In modern times, in the age of 450s off ladders through tables, it's become rather laughable to have the good old pile driver variations be career-threatening. Exhibit A: Kevin Owens taking out Randy Orton, Cody Rhodes, and Sami Zayn with it in recent time. Match-ending finisher? Sure. But with how ridiculous offense has become, including Canadian destroyers all over the place, the pile driver being a career threatener just made Owens' victims look oddly fragile. In 1982, though, with a more grounded presentation and style still dominating wrestling in the US, it was far easier to believe Lawler's pile driver would cripple a non-wrestler like Kaufman. Did these two hang out with Letterman all out of character? Did they laugh about hoodwinking the fans with their worked angle? No. It was a pure kayfabe job so hectic that even Motormouth Letterman was unsure of how to handle it. Kaufman talked about the pain he was in from his neck injury. An unrepentant Lawler kept roasting Kaufman until he just about won over the initially jeering and sneering New York audience. And when things got a little testier, Lawler sent the neck brace sporting Kaufman to the ground with a hard slap, eliciting a shocked gasp of uncomfortable fear from an audience who were no longer having such a good time after all. An incensed Kaufman comes storming back on stage soon after to throw Letterman's coffee at Lawler. That year, no doubt David Letterman had more famous guests than a cult favourite comedian and a wrestling territory's favourite from down south, but no one could match the entertainment value, the confusion, or the general controversy these two slapped together, no pun intended, by fully committing to their story and putting in the extra 10% to refuse to even hint that this whole absurd situation was a work. Kaufman forbade all involved from ever admitting the story was just that, until after his untimely death in 1984, a mere 2 years after this seminal TV moment hit the airwaves. At just 35 years old, Kaufman had established a strong, often confounding legacy of a man who challenged what comedy itself was meant to be, trolling audiences with a litany of elaborate roles, bits, characters, and setups no one else would have even dared to consider running with on a big stage. It took a whopping 15 years for the cat to finally finish officially coming out of the bag when the Kaufman biopic Man on the Moon hit screens. Jim Carrey, whose early stand-up success owed a lot to Kaufman's own impressionist work, dove hook, line, and sinker into embodying the man himself, from his distinctive physical mannerisms to his bizarre character work, leaving no stone unturned in trying to capture the eccentric essence of the man himself. Part of that involved picking fights with Jerry Lawler on set, who stepped on in to play the role of Jerry Lawler. Wow. What a challenging role that must have been for him. The film depicts scenes of Kaufman and Lawler comfortably discussing their feud and work together, finally admitting what everyone knew all along anyway, that it was fake, it was a work, it was silly. And while everyone knew, the commitment to not playing by the rules and admitting to it for so long was one of many key reasons why the feud struck a chord with wrestling fans despite its often incredibly silly content and payoffs. That level of kayfabe may never live again at any meaningful level, sure. It's the fact that no one's even trying anymore that really sinks in the trouble. Fast forward to the mid-2010s, and one lazy part-timer often did try to challenge this issue, Brock Lesnar. Despite not growing up as a fan, or enjoying his original time in the WWE at all, Lesnar has frequently shown a deeper understanding of and respect for the importance of legitimacy and maintaining kayfabe than his more passionate, dedicated peers. Bell to bell, the big heavyweight hoss relies largely on basic, but very high-impact offense, realistic, pain-stricken selling, and vicious, often surprising finishes that reflect the horror of a surprise KO in an actual sport such as MMA. The result is, while almost never half-hour classics, a dangerous fight feel where any moment could spell doom for either Lesnar or his foe, keeping fans on their toes about where the stiff fight they're seeing will go next. Never a fan of interviews when Lesnar has made media appearances specifically representing the WWE, not the UFC like he did in 2016. He largely did it in character. Look no further than that same year, funnily enough, with his appearances on the red carpet ahead of SummerSlam 2016. Both Brock Lesnar and Paul Heyman showed up in character. Lesnar is a grumpy meathead. Heyman is a suitably extroverted slimeball. And when Brock Lesnar encountered the menace of what culture wrestling, the Joe Goldberg of sports entertainment YouTube, Adam Blampier himself, he was hit with a few kayfabe unfriendly questions from a man whose eyes were undressing Sasha Banks that night. Shameful.
So, Brock, it's a personal question. I just wanted to ask, do you enjoy being a wrestler?
Brock, do you enjoy wrestling? What are you trying to imply with that, Blampier? It's the man's job.
Who, in the world of professional wrestling, or otherwise, who would you want to fight?
Brock, who would you like to wrestle? I'm amazed he didn't go with Brock. Which diva do you want to shag? Lesnar looked unimpressed, understandably so. He looks disinterested, giving cold answers about how much he loved beating people up for money.
I enjoy stepping into the ring and competing, yes.
At what point during your career, because when you started out, did you have a passion for pro wrestling and the art of the business? At what point do you think you became a prize fighter who cared more about the bottom line than about the craft?
It's never been about that for me. It's really, I show up to do a job, and I get paid to do a job. It's no different than anybody, than a job that you're standing here trying to do. I've never sat as a young kid and pondered becoming a pro wrestler. Listen, I don't view myself as a pro wrestler. I view myself as an athlete, I guess. That's the separation. I'm not a superstar. I'm an ass kicker. I've said it before. I don't, this is legit to me. It's all legit. It's a real deal. That's why I'm standing here today. Vince McMahon brought me back to this company because I'm the real deal. No ifs, ands, or buts about it.
No one can argue. I'm Adam from WhatCulture.com. I've been with Brock Lesnar and Paul Heyman. Thank you so much for talking to me. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Fighting as a job, doing it the way Blampier tries to do his considerably less interesting gig. And to that I say, don't beat yourself up too much, Brock. There's no stories of you. Oh, actually, never mind. And this was all much better than if Brock Lesnar had smiled, laughed, talked about how putting together a worked match is just so much fun for him. How Samoa Joe or AJ Styles or whoever is someone he'd love to work with. But no. He treated it like it was a sport. Like he is the beast incarnate. And like this interviewer's questions made little to no sense. Because if your character was in kayfabe, these were strange things to ask. Heyman played along as well, looking comically unimpressed by Blampier and then lightly roasting him when Lesnar was done answering his stuff. This is the way, and it's not cringe, like regular lame look-at-me style cringe so many wannabes peddle these days. It's a signature brand of entertainment and performance. These guys aren't actors, they're not competitive sportsmen, they're something else, something that is both more and less, and their medium has different rules. Brock Lesnar was one of the last top acts who actually gave at least a little bit of commitment to this idea, and thrupled with his name value and the fact he only turned up a quarter of the time, everything he did on the shows felt like a big deal. Now fast forward to today. Gunther, a fairly old-fashioned wrestler by modern standards, feuded with Jey Uso for WrestleMania 41. To inject some heat into the build, Gunther was booked to beat Jey's brother Jimmy to a bloody pulp as a zip-tied Jey watched on in horror. On screen, Jey Uso cut a strong promo the next week promising to teach Gunther a lesson. Off screen, Jey Uso blabbed, fully out of any semblance of kayfabe, about how grateful he was for Jimmy Uso blading and adding a lot of heat to the angle. By all means, thank your brother in reality, but in what world does droning on about the fakery of a heated angle still going, that got crowd investment a mere week or two after it happened, help maintain heat and interest? The Rock, the final boss, returned this year seemingly unsure of what angle he actually wanted to run. Flip-flopping between heel and face on the mic from sentence to sentence, finally he committed to playing a creepy authoritarian heel, obsessed with getting Cody Rhodes to sell out and become his devoted, soulless, corporatized champion. On X, in interviews, everywhere beyond the ring, Johnson kept reminding us all the final boss is just a silly character he plays. We know, thank you. Let us watch it properly. It was almost like Johnson was worried some marks out there would think it was real and start boycotting his movies on account of how evil and weird he seemed on WWE TV. And Triple H, the head of creative for now, as I mentioned earlier, cosplaying as Dana White with counterproductive post-PLE press conferences. And yes, AEW are guilty of this too, I'll get to that in a second. I can just smell the enraged WWE stans who are going to comment I'm a stupid woke cuck who eats Cheetos, AEW elitist virgin or some nonsense. So original, so clever, so witty. Triple knows every show talking about his booking, about the backstage workings of the industry, discussing butchers, bumps, angles, talents, completely lifting the veil on the business, all in a desperate bid to remind us all how important he is to the frankly very middle of the road, blur product WWE has become in recent time. A PR stunt, essentially, to try and garner fan support ahead of when TKO inevitably replace him with their own people down the road. And for fans who think that's a ridiculous notion, just remember, Vince McMahon kept Bob Backlund as the champ for 2 years after he took over the WWF from his father. The moment he found who he wanted to front his vision of the show, Hulk Hogan, Backlund dropped the gold to the Iron Sheik, so Hogan had a big heel to overcome and kick off his run on top with. In AEW, holding these celebrations of the fakery of wrestling was the beginning of the end for the promotion's growth and hype. All Out 2022, CM Punk beats resident self-harm mascot Jon Moxley to become the AEW World Champion, fed up of the politics backstage and all the unfortunate dirt sheets rumors circulating about him. Punk completely tore the whole promotion a new one, focusing in particular on the Young Bucks and Adam Page, all while Tony Khan just awkwardly sat there, unsure of how to cool the situation down. It was these ludicrous press conferences where Chris Jericho ranted ad nauseum about MJF becoming a babyface, his kayfabe former arch-rival who made his life hell and threw him off the top of a cage, and right after a big show no less, Jericho was cheesing over MJF, maybe turning face someday.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of MJF, I really am. And I said to him, when you come back, you're going to be a babyface. And he's like, I don't want to be a babyface, I don't want to be a babyface. I said, it's going to happen.
Presumably because Y2 Geriatric didn't want any rivals to the top heel of AEW's spot he has so frequently ruined over the years. Time and again, performers and promoters embarrassing themselves in these aimless, silly presses that do next to nothing to drum up actual interest in the actual shows. And now the curtain to the world of writing, fake fighting, is getting even more torn asunder, and before we get to the new wave of kayfabe destruction that will quite possibly be the beginning of this video's incredibly over-dramatic title coming to fruition someday. Let's just remember Karrion Kross, a triple-nose favourite in NXT who was infamously castrated by Vince McMahon on the main roster. Kross has toyed with a variety of gimmicks during his current run with the WWE, desperately trying to get over in the stormy seas of the WWE's topsy-turvy mid-card scene. His current shtick is a more reserved take on Sean O'Haire's excellent Devil's Advocate gimmick, a work of art cut frustratingly short all because O'Haire wasn't exactly Jake Roberts on the mic or whatever, with O'Haire a guy oozing with potential, instead being saddled with a disinterested Roddy Piper as his mouthpiece before being let go from the WWE entirely. Kross is a little more comfortable on the mic than O'Haire, and slowly but surely his new shtick has garnered at least some interest. During the WrestleMania recap for this year's Mania live stream, Kross popped on in to have a chat with Sam Roberts, who, you know what, let's just stop and look at this guy for a second. Doesn't he look like Jon Moxley? If Moxley didn't eat, blade, or work out, ever, he's like Moxley gone wrong, or right, depending on how you look at it. The Scrappy-Doo to Moxley's Scooby. Anyways, Kross went on an epic tirade about the WWE's overemphasis on moments and social media engagement over adequate storytelling and the actual abilities of their performers. It just happened to tie in with Logan Paul, who was feuding with AJ Styles, who was also feuding with Kross, the third wheel in the angle. This was a worked shoot. Kross is, or at least was, a Triple H favourite, and while he did criticise the promotion here, it was all at least broadly in line with the angle he was a part of. And you had all these wrestling YouTubers and journos just losing their minds, like Kross had just had his network moment.
And go to the window, open it, and stick your head out and yell, "I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not gonna take this anymore!"
No. This is how things go with kayfabe as dead as a piece of Kentucky Fried Chicken. Stories can't be stories anymore. Everything has to tie into backstage shenanigans, work rate, and what it's like to work here. Maybe this promo leads to Kross finally getting over properly. Maybe it leads to nothing, like every other angle he's been given. But either way, promos like this are part of the problem, killing off the illusion and the fun, and forcing shows to stumble full-on into worked-shoot territory that will inevitably alienate a lot of the more casual fans out there who probably have no idea what half the comments and ideas are even concerning because they don't read the dirt sheets. WWE Unreal. I mean, come on, that title tells you everything you need to know. This stuff is as fake as the day is long. Have we reminded you of this phony trash and how phony it is again yet today? You're watching something that's fake. It's fake, guys. Fake. Obviously, wrestling requires writers. Frankly, they should be in the shadows. No one sits down to watch them. They can shut their mouths and stay off camera. How about that? When Kota Ibushi left New Japan under miserable circumstances a couple of years ago, his body ravaged by injuries and illness, he let loose that Gedo, what a name, the man long assumed to be the head of creative in New Japan, had a mystery superior, the real head of such and such. Now, obviously, it's a shame Ibushi's body and career fell apart so grimly. He was an excellent talent in his prime, but it's quite fascinating how completely New Japan's creative team and office were a total mystery to fans. New Japan is fake too, obviously, but at least they try and keep the ins and outs of their fakery to themselves wherever possible. And WWE Unreal, as reported by the many dirt sheet rags out there, has already thrown WWE talent for a loop, with some reveals regarding WrestleMania 41 bouts that did not come to fruition. Different plans, including the long-rumoured Judgment Day versus Wyatt 6 bout that fell through. And finally, those pesky dirt sheets. Since the 80s, barely literate slop merchants like Dave Meltzer have been lifting the lid as a grift, time and again exposing the business, dropping spoilers, desperately trying to squeeze any real info out of any talent they can. An entire profession built out of exposing the smoke and mirrors of an industry you're not even really in. Basically, while kayfabe's largely been in the ground since the 80s, this decade has seen a whole host of abominations get committed against its long-rotting corpse. Everything that made wrestling a little different, a little eccentric in the world of entertainment is getting taken away. and you're left with something not high level enough to compete with proper TV shows, and not authentic or prestigious enough to compete with actual combat sports. Just a messy hybrid of genres struggling to keep itself set apart from the other options on TV tonight.